We all know that feeling, right? Trying to really get inside someone's head, understand what makes them tick. Letters can be such an amazing way to do that.
Absolutely. They offer this incredibly direct window.
And today, we're opening that window onto someone very famous. We're taking a deep dive into some incredibly intimate letters.
We are. We're looking at Vincent van Gogh's letters, specifically from his time in Amsterdam in 1877 and 1878. It's a really pivotal time for him.
So our mission for you today, listening in, is to really get a feel for Van Gogh during this phase. He was seriously thinking about becoming a clergyman.
Yeah, that was the main goal. But what's fascinating, and what you'll hear, is that even though art wasn't the focus, his artistic side, those sensibilities, they're definitely there, kind of bubbling away.
Okay, so where are we getting this from?
These are excerpts from his personal letters, mostly to his brother Theo, so it's straight from the source, his own words describing his life then.
Great, let's jump in. He arrives in Amsterdam, May 1877. What's the plan?
The big plan is theology. He moves there specifically to study, and he stays with his uncle, Reverend J.P. Stricker.
Ah, the uncle. He was a
Yeah,
preacher himself, then.
exactly. A guiding figure for Vincent at this point. And Vincent really threw himself into it.
I remember reading about the languages, Latin and Greek.
Uh-huh. Studying them diligently with a Dr. M.B. Mendez de Costa.
Oh?
Plus, he was going to church services regularly. It all points to this long-held ambition, to enter the clergy.
But Amsterdam itself, it sparked something else too, didn't it? Artistically.
It really did. He writes about the harbors, the canals, how they reminded him of Ramsgate, where he'd lived before.
Okay, a personal memory.
Yes, but also he connects them to Rembrandt's etchings.
Ah, okay. So even the city landscape gets filtered through art.
Right. It suggests that for him, these things, faith, observation, art, they weren't really separate boxes, maybe more like different ways of seeing the same world.
And that bled into his personal space too, his room.
Definitely. The letters mention the reproductions he put up. They showed his love for God, yes, but also right alongside it, his love for art.
So this duality is there from early on.
It really seems so. God and art, side by side, it kind of hints at his later ability to find something almost spiritual in very ordinary scenes, maybe?
That makes sense. We also get this really specific story about him buying art very early on. A letter from May 77.
Oh, yeah, that's a great little snapshot. He's spent the day with Theo, and he mentions going to a Jewish bookseller.
And he buys some prints.
He does. 13 lithographs for 70 cents.
70 cents for 13 prints. What a steal!
Isn't it? Every art lover's dream find. And he lists them, which is fantastic for us.
So what was he buying? What caught his eye back then?
Okay, let's see. There was one after J. Maris, A Poor Man in the Kingdom of God. One after Mollinger, though he didn't know the title. One after Jammin, which Theo apparently also had. One by M. Maris, that little boy going to school. 5 pictures after Bosboom.
Bosboom, the church interior guy.
That's the one. Also, Vandermotten's funeral procession in the cornfields, Israel's A Poor Man on a Snowy Winter Road, Astad's studio.
Quite a mix.
And one by Alebe, a little old woman on a winter morning fetching hot water and coals. He actually sent that one to his brother Cor for his birthday.
That's thoughtful. But his reason for buying them, it wasn't about building a collection, was it?
No, not in the way we might think of it now. He says explicitly he wanted to give his room some atmosphere.
Atmosphere.
Yeah, something to, as he put it, help him get new ideas and freshen my mind. It was about creating an environment for thought, for inspiration, using art as a tool, really.
That's interesting, using art to fuel his theological studies at that point.
Exactly, it's all intertwined.
And he wasn't just buying things, he was getting materials too. His uncle Cor helped out.
Yes, Uncle Cor sent him some old paper to work on, which he was really happy about. Practical stuff.
And he used that lovely metaphor about it.
Ah, the ivy, yes. He compares using a pen on paper to ivy climbing a wall, how it stealeth on though he wears no wings.
Such a poetic way to think about the slow, steady work of creation.
Isn't it? It connects that effort to something natural, organic.
And this artistic way of seeing, it wasn't confined to his room or his drawing paper. His walks around Amsterdam.
They were key. He describes walking through different areas, the Buitenkant with the workers and sand carts, the narrow streets with ivy.
That reminded him of Ramsgate again.
Uh-huh. He says it had the feel of Ramsgate about it, and then walks past windmills, canals, elm trees.
And that triggered the Rembrandt connection again.
Directly. He says everything there reminds one of Rembrandt's etchings. It's like he couldn't not see the world artistically.
Do you think it was the light? or the composition? What
Yeah.
specifically made him think Rembrandt?
That's a great point. Probably a mix, you know? The Dutch light, the subjects, the composition, plus his own deep admiration for Rembrandt already. It all comes together.
Now, let's talk about the studies themselves. This theology path wasn't easy, right?
Hmm.
He mentioned some tough reading.
Oh, definitely. He talks about starting Streckfuss's Allgemeine Geschiedenis General History. He admits it's demanding.
But he seems determined,
Yes, he seems to think that just by plugging away consistently he'll get there. He actually connects this to other fields.
including art.
Yes. He brings up that famous quote by Corot, something like, "It only took 40 years of work, thought, and attention."
Right. 40 years.
And he draws a direct line between that kind of dedication needed for painting, mentioning Rembrandt and Millet, and the dedication needed for theology, mentioning his father, Uncle Stricker, and others.
So the level of commitment required felt similar to him across these different callings.
It seems so. The pursuit of mastery, whether spiritual or artistic, requires immense effort.
And underpinning all this effort was his faith, obviously. He talks about needing more than just his own thoughts.
He really emphasizes that the need for comfort, blessing, guidance from a higher power. He felt anyone truly seeking would feel that.
He even quotes hymns in the letters.
Yes, evangelical hymns, lines about God's promises, finding security in faith. And interestingly, he links this old faith to a whole group of people.
Who was he mentioned?
Artists like Artson, Rembrandt, Millet, Bosboom alongside his family members like his father, Uncle Jan, Uncle Cor. It's like he sees this continuous spiritual thread running through them all.
That's fascinating. Weaving art and family into his religious framework.
Yeah.
He also keeps up with personal connections, asking about people in the art world.
He does. He asks Theo about Mrs. Tersteeg and the painter Mauve, showing he's still connected there.
And he mentions specific paintings.
Yeah, works by Ruysdael, Van Goyen, Bosboom, and he links them to the specific feeling he calls we mode.
We mode. What's that translate to?
He describes it as sorrowful yet always rejoicing.
Wow. Sorrowful yet always rejoicing. That feels very Van Gogh, actually.
Doesn't it? That complexity, finding light in the darkness, or maybe joy within sadness, it's a really powerful early glimpse into his emotional world, which, you could argue, fueled so much of his later art.
Absolutely. That phrase really sticks with you. He also wants Theo to share his experiences, right? Like going to church.
He expresses hope Theo might join him sometime. And he remembers their father's New Year's Eve prayer. Those family and faith connections remain strong.
It wasn't just religious figures or artists, though. He mentioned seeing a portrait of Michelet, the historian.
Yes. He looks closely at it and thinks about Michelet's life, calling it Sa vie d'encre de papier, a life of ink and paper. Shows his respect for that kind of intellectual dedication.
He also throws in relatable details, like finding it hard to wake up early.
Ah, yes, a very human touch. And mentions planning to visit Uncle Stricker again.
Okay, let's shift to a slightly later letter, March 1878. Spring is coming, and his tone changes a bit.
Yeah, there's a sense of longing for Theo's company, especially with the nice weather arriving. He describes his Sunday morning routine.
What was he up to?
Hearing a sermon by Reverend Loriard, coffee with Uncle Stricker, visiting a Sunday school. He even visited some Roman Catholic churches. Seems he had a broad curiosity about religious life.
But there are more somber notes, too. Visiting people who weren't well.
Right. He mentions seeing Vus, who was ill, and Key, who looked pale. Then he visits Uncle Cor.
The one who gave him the paper.
That's him. And he notices the salon's been redecorated, new wallpaper, new carpet, and how it highlights the Gazette des Beaux-Arts volumes with their red bindings, always noticing the visual detail.
And then Uncle Cor gives him some news. Big news.
Yes! The death of the painter d'Aubigny.
How did Vincent take that?
He says he was quite downcast. He compares his reaction to when he heard about the death of another artist, Briand.
Briand. Didn't he have a painting by him?
He did. Briand's Benedicite hung in his room. So losing these artists, it clearly hit him hard. It shows how much their work meant to him personally.
It really does. And it leads him to reflect on the meaning of their work, doesn't it?
Beautifully, yes. He says something like, "It must be good to die knowing you've done some truthful work, and that you'll live on in memory and leave a good example."
That's quite profound, the idea that the thought behind the work endures, even if the physical piece doesn't last forever.
Exactly. And then, shifting gears slightly, he tells Theo he plans to send him a small gift.
Ooh, what was it?
A Flemish edition of The Imitation of Christ. A spiritual text. But then he's right back to art. mentioning Daubigny's etchings after Rosdale and how his uncle promised to get them. Landscape art is still very much on his mind.
He seems to have been involved in some interesting discussions, too.
Yeah, he mentions visiting a Reverend Ganeben and talking about the importance of really throwing yourself into your work, whatever it is.
And his own studies continued beyond just theology.
Seems so. He talks about working on the history of the Netherlands, even making an abstract. He mentions specific events like Waterloo, the 10-day campaign, even Rakessen's painting of the Siege of Leyden.
So quite intellectually active across different subjects.
Definitely. And he keeps mentioning how much he looks forward to Theo's visits, asking him to stay longer. That bond was clearly vital.
And they shared interests in reading, too. He recommends books.
He does. He's very enthusiastic about George Eliot.
Ah, yes. Which ones?
Adam Bede, Silas Marner, Felix Holt, Romola, which he notes is about Savonarola, and scenes from clerical life.
Wow, quite the list.
And he mentions they'd given 3 of those to their father for his birthday. Apparently other people, like a Reverend McFarlane and someone named Adler, had also recommended Eliot to him.
So literature was clearly another major source of inspiration and thought for him.
Absolutely. And he mentions writing to a friend, Harry Gladwell, hoping he'll become a clergyman, still promoting that path for others.
But then, almost in the next breath, he's back to art again. Millet.
You see this pattern, don't you? He recalls Millet's etchings, one of a man pushing a wheelbarrow of manure, and another called Les Bêcheurs, the diggers.
Very earthy working class subjects.
Exactly. That appreciation for the common laborer, the connection to the soil, it's so central to Millet, and you can see why it resonated with Vincent.
And there's that slightly odd detail about manure in the Bible.
Huh, yes. He mentions Uncle Stricker was looking for biblical texts that mention manure or dung, trying to connect that earthy reality to scripture, perhaps.
It's certainly specific.
Yeah.
He also mentions making a list of Brion's pictures. Still cataloging, still engaging.
Right. And he ends that section with this plea, Lord, keep my memory green.
That's quite poignant, wanting to hold on to all these impressions, these experiences.
It really is. And that leads us into the next letter, April 3rd, 1878, which is full of deeper reflections. He starts with a saying,
Nous sommes aujourd'hui ce que nous étions hier. We are today what we were yesterday. But he doesn't see it as an excuse to stagnate, does he?
Quite the opposite. He says it should motivate us to keep improving, not to slide back. He links this to becoming an honnête homme, an honorable, decent person, and also an homme intérieur et spirituel.
An inner and spiritual man.
Yes. And he tells this little story about overcoming doubt.
The one about the person in church.
That's it. Feeling uncertain, then hearing a voice say, essentially, act as if you are certain and you won't be let down. It's about the power of committed action, even amidst doubt.
And how does he think one becomes this inner and spiritual man?
Through knowledge, he suggests. Knowledge of history from the Bible right up to the French Revolution. Knowledge of literature, Homer, Dickens, Michelet.
And art, presumably.
Absolutely. He lists Rembrandt, Breton, Millet, De Groux, Brion, Dupuy, Michel. He sees engagement with all these great works, historical, literary, artistic, as crucial for inner development.
It's about holding on to the good stuff.
Basically, yes. Hold fast to good thoughts, good deeds, and eventually you bear the fruit of good works. You reach that state of being sorrowful yet always rejoicing.
That phrase again.
It keeps coming back. He also talks about needing le rayon d'en haut, the ray from on high, divine light for life to have real meaning.
And he returns to the practical idea of finding your place in the world.
Find your profession. Dedicate yourself. A victory won over a lifetime means more than quick success. And he has such empathy for those who struggle.
Those lines about the laborers.
Yes. Laboureur, votre vie est triste. Vous souffrez, vous êtes bien heureux. Laborers, your life is sad. You suffer, yet you are blessed. Seeing the inherent worth and even blessedness in hardship and toil. Again, you see the seeds of his later paintings there.
Definitely. He then thinks about his own goal, becoming a preacher.
And he knows it requires serious preparation. You need to gather a treasure of faith and understanding before you can share it. He uses that word we mode again, too.
The sorrowful rejoicing. How does he use it here?
He breaks it down. We is sorrow or pain, but mode is courage. So you need courage to overcome the sorrow inherent in life. Perseverance.
And love seems central to his thinking here as well.
Hugely. He quotes Michelet saying, love is the noblest thing in the human heart. Actions done with love are done well. He urges Theo to be faithful in love, to focus it on worthy things, not waste it.
He also values becoming really good at something specific.
Yes, developing expertise, independent thought. It builds character, he thinks. But you also need balance
Balance between what?
between engaging with the world and having that quiet solitude needed for your own inner work. You need both.
And he ends this letter with some powerful final thoughts.
He does. Keep your inner fire burning. Find the richness in choosing simplicity, even poverty. Listen to your conscience, God's greatest gift, he calls it.
Find happiness and faith even when things are hard.
Right. Believe in the miraculous, stay humble, value the wisdom of the simple, don't settle for less than the infinite. He feels the great artists and writers understood this.
He uses a metaphor about the sea.
Yeah, plumbing the depths of the sea of life. Keep striving, sursum corda. Lift up your hearts. Understand our shared humanity. Love one another. Don't get too hung up on your weaknesses.
We're all tested by life.
Exactly. That fire tests us and confirms us as honnête somme, decent people. Then he sends his best wishes to Theo.
And one last image.
Just a simple one. Keep even a small light of faith burning. He connects it to a memory of a Sunday school room and Adler.
Wow. So, stepping back from all that, what really stands out from this Amsterdam period based on these letters?
Well, you really see this fascinating mix, don't you? The intense religious strive, but alongside it, this constant, irrepressible artistic sensibility. His mind is just buzzing with connections, art, literature, history, faith, personal experience.
His intellectual curiosity is huge. And his deep, deep appreciation for art and literature as sources of meaning and comfort. Plus, all those reflections on faith, perseverance, the value of struggle.
And you get these glimpses of his own struggles, his hopes, his intense bond with Theo. It's a very rich picture of a young man trying to find his way.
So for you listening, hopefully diving into these letters has given you maybe a different perspective, some surprising moments, a deeper feel for Van Gogh before he was Van Gogh, the painter we know.
Right, which leads to maybe a final thought to ponder.
Go on.
How did all these things we've talked about, the religious searching, the love of literature, the deep observation, the empathy for laborers, the connection to artists like Millet and Rembrandt, how might all these threads woven together during this time focused on theology actually feed into the incredible unique artistic vision that burst out later?
That's a great question. What can we learn about how different, even seemingly contradictory influences can shape our own paths, maybe leading somewhere unexpected? Something to think about.